Africa Film for Impact Festival.
Afternoon or evening, depending on which part of the world you're joining us from. It's an absolute privilege for the University of Cape Town Centre for Film and Media Studies to partner with AFFIF, the African Film for Impact Festival, to host this series of 4 impact sessions. And we are so happy to be here today with an incredible panel of speakers who are going to give us an idea of the international impact landscape with some great ideas for local partnerships and local solutions to the problems that we all face when we design and implement an impact strategy. So welcome to everyone. This is the 4th and final in our series at AFFIF, and it's also AFFIF is the last festival that we hit this year, the last of 3. So this is a bit of a celebration. This is our final session, and I hope you all enjoy it. Welcome to everyone who's in the room. You will see that the lovely Mickey Redlinghuis is going to populate the chat with links. So as our speakers talk, she is going to do her best to put the relevant link in as quickly as possible. So please do copy and paste those links from the chat. Maybe wait until the end and then just download the whole bunch. And there should be, when you go to the 3 dots, there should be an option to save chat, which will make a text document on your computer. I don't know how it works on your phone, maybe screenshot. And then I also want to invite you to pose your questions in the chat, and Mickey is going to collate them and feed them through to the panel if we have time for Q&A. I just have to warn you, with our previous sessions, the panel has been giving us such amazing, rich information that we ran out of time. So we will do our very best to pose your questions to them, but we might not get to it. And Mickey will also answer any of the questions that she can easily answer in the chat. So welcome everyone, and I'd like to start straight away by introducing our panel. In no particular order, I'm going to start with Judy Kabinge. She is one of the founders of DocuBox, which is an incredible organization based in Nairobi, Kenya, that supports filmmakers from Kenya and East Africa. And she also ran Good Pitch Kenya in 2016, and that's where I first met her. And they're just about to go into another one, into Good Pitch Kenya 2020 next week, I believe. Bidi Finzi is the co-founder of Doc Society, and they have moved on to doing a lot of work on the climate change scene, and they're just using incredible tools from documentary film, all sorts of storytelling, humor to get important messages across. And Bidi has been such an incredible mentor and an inspiration in terms of supporting social justice, environmental and human rights films. So I feel very privileged that she's joining us today. Sadal Willow-Smith is one of my South African compatriots, and she is the co-founder of Sunbox Cinema, an incredible project that takes films where they hadn't been seen before. And she will be telling us about the technology and also about the networks that they use to achieve that. And then Sophie Svaraman is joining us from India, and she is involved with the Indian Documentary Foundation, and she is also the woman behind Good Pitch India. And we look forward to hearing from all 4 of you. Before we launch into your projects, I just want to acknowledge that I'm on the ancestral land of the sun and the cuckoo here in the Western Cape. And with no further ado, I'm going to bounce the ball around our panel. Bidi, I do want to start with you because you really have the overview of how Doc Society supports impact film around the world. And I'd love for you to tell us about the work that you do and spotlight the projects that you're currently busy with that you feel would be relevant to the folks in the room. filmmakers and aspiring impact producers who are making non-fiction and fiction social change films. And if you could spend a moment just explaining to us how Good Pitch, all the different segments of Good Pitch, global, national, local, how they fit together.
Amazing, thank you. And thank you for the warm welcome. Wonderful to see my fellow panelists. I have a favor to ask of this room. Could everyone switch their cameras on? It's a little bizarre. It's like coming to a meeting where everyone's got a paper bag over their head. Do people feel brave enough to switch cameras on? It would be amazing. Would feel a little human. Come on, I'm going to tickle you. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate you. If we can just see your faces, otherwise it's like talking into the, I don't know what, into the dark. Thank you so much. So I know this is we're the final session. We've got, this is the RUM panel, right? You've been at work and listening to so many incredible case studies for the last, how is it, 2 hours, Liani? Everyone's been hard at work? 2 hours.
Yeah, an hour and a half.
Okay, so we're coming at the end of all that, and I'm hoping at this point, having heard from the community and the individual teams and the campaigns you've heard about, that you're totally inspired, maybe a little daunted, maybe. But I guess I wanted to start with this fact, is that in 2020, you know, after an amazing kind of decade where filmmakers, impact producers, cultural organizations have really been centering and accelerating ideas around impact and impact distribution, and doing so with incredible ambition, and doing so on every single continent. This isn't just a sort of something that happens in North America or maybe in the UK, not at all. I hope you're feeling, well, wait a minute, this is an amazing moment. We have case studies, a lot of them now, from every country you can imagine, ranging on every topic you can imagine. There is codified practice, which I can absorb and think through and adapt and apply to my context. There is a global community, of practitioners, both filmmakers, impact producers, cultural organizations who are ready to ally and partner. Actually, you have everything you need just to jump in. And on one level, I just say, it begins with a great film. You need that, otherwise this work goes nowhere. And you need to have a really good impact distribution strategy. And then you just need to begin. And I guess, I just want to, uplift colleagues on this panel. I'm sure others in this room, Sophie Sivaram, Sadell, Judy, they have literally been building the infrastructure, ground up, a piece at a time in their contexts. And so, yeah, I guess I want to just say to you, just start. Just start. There's no other mystery than that. And if you were sitting hoping that I was going to read out a list of the kind of funders and partners that are just going to fix everything in your territory, well, I haven't got the faintest clue. Why should I? I'm sitting in the east of England. But what I do know is if you can start to, the trail of breadcrumbs is there in the field guide. I don't know if people have had a chance to download that tome. And I just want to flag one page just to directly address this question of who the hell am I going to partner with? Let's just quickly look at this single document here. So inside the field guide, if you've had a chance, download the PDF, the interactive PDF, and you'll see a kind of breakdown of all of these sections. At the very, very, very beginning of this section, there is this bullet point here, 2.4, which is about mapping the issue. What does that actually mean? It's a kind of profound task which charges the filmmaker and the impact producer to say, okay, I've got this film. I understand the social issues and the questions that it's leaning into. So my first challenge is to think about all the key stakeholders who are working to save the same problem that the film addresses. And I'm going to start to paint a map, a constellation of all the organizations and entities that could support me, that could work with me. Well, and let's reverse that back out, not just work with me, but that my film could uplift. So in no particular order, that could include, the communities represented in the film. They are your natural allies. It's about experts and academics who are working in that specific issue. It's thinking about brands and companies who are also aligned, and I mean authentically aligned. It's identifying the campaigners and the advocates who are in this space, the funders and the philanthropists, but also the politicians and the policymakers. It's about re-envisaging a press strategy which goes way beyond just kind of film press and thinks about how we can create cultural narrative shift. Sometimes it's about engaging messaging and framing experts, particularly of social media or a digital strategy, is your point. It's about identifying the NGOs, the small ones and the large ones, and the public figures who have aligned goals with this project. Create your map. It will be highly specific. It could be national, it could be regional, but that's where you begin. That's where you begin. And you begin with your film, your impact distribution strategy, and then you just start knocking on doors and beginning that conversation. There is no silver bullet. It's just that. It's actually as simple as that too, and as profound as that. Okay, I'm going to leave space for lots of other questions and thoughts, but just to address the particular question that Liani left hanging at the end of the last section, which is how the hell do I find my partners? Well, look, there's a guide, there's a strategy there to begin that work. And I guess I just, I can't wait to hear from Sadell, from Judy, from Sophie also, who are doing this work, who have iterated in the local context in which they operate and beginning to devise the new pathways, new partnerships, which can make sure that the most brilliant storytelling of our time, and that's people in this room, you are the storytellers, that those films get to the people who matter, who need to see them most. And the social change that we want to see is made manifest. What do I think the challenges are? Because let's put those on the table. This isn't just a, academic or intellectual notion. Well, COVID-19, it's causing huge disruption for many of us. Some of the greatest plans, greatest ideas, greatest films are like frozen. All of those best laid plans are either being paused or adapted. I want to respect that and acknowledge that. And some of us are going to have to either be patient or make a new plan. One or the other. So let's acknowledge that. But I just want to identify and leave hanging in the room some of the other structural challenges, which I think we can fix as a community. I think in spite of all the incredible evidence and the case studies of the last sort of 10, 15 years of excellent films that have created huge and significant impact in the world, that have had a much longer tail, a much longer life, a much more profound life because they deployed impact distribution strategies. There is still confusion, ambivalence, resistance from many of our partners in classical distribution and exhibition and sales agents who kind of don't get it. They have a cookie cutter model, which was defined and devised in the 20th century. It usually worked for fiction and never really worked for docs, but it still gets applied to us anyway. And they are a bit like, this all sounds quite nice, but actually we have a way that we do things. And we're pursuing a bottom line, which is fiscal return first. It's not impact first. And so actually this is a bit annoying. And it's maybe going to interrupt our flow. So those are some of the challenges. Those are some of the people we need, and institutions we need to win over. And everyone in this room needs to play a part in doing that. We must demonstrate that these models, this strategy of impact distribution can uplift. I see it as a win-win-win-win-win for everybody, and that's the beginning and end of it. And we need to win that case, and we haven't won that yet. So to summarize, we now have all the evidence we need, the case studies we need, a kind of rubric to adapt and play with. We have success happening in every continent, in every context. There isn't anywhere in the world that's not trying this out. It's mainly being led by the innovation of the independent documentary film community, but not exclusively. And that can change, by the way. So there's everything to go for now, just to jump in and to try and to start building within your context. But I want to acknowledge too the challenges that lie before us and the challenges of the next 3, 5, 10 years that we need to begin to fix. How's that, Liani?
That is a mouthful. And as always, Bidi, very inspiring. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's incredible once you've drawn that constellation of potential partners, how you can start reaching out to them. And once one domino drops, it becomes easier for the next and the next and the next to drop. It's difficult to get your first partner on board, but as soon as you have one, it's almost like an exponential growth. Sophie, I'd love to shift to you now. Could you tell us a little bit about the work that you do and some of your best practice in India?
So we host Good Pitch India and Good Pitch Local in the country. They're both very different, and creating partners with them is also very different. Good Pitch India pretty much comes is funded by Ford Foundation, and we manage to, you go through your budget and you see what can you possibly cover in terms of support from various partners, because India as a country don't give money easily, but they give a lot of their resources, their time, um, anything else other than money they will give. So you kind of get your budget substantiated by getting hospitality supported, maybe promotional work supported, food supported, venue supported. So you kind of bring that budget number down, and that's how we primarily work when we are working with local and national. National is feature documentaries, and local is short formats, which we celebrate, and they are so it's exciting. Local is very exciting because it's the local people, the local culture, the local activists, media makers, filmmakers, organizations, all coming in with their projects, all learning from each other. So you have activists learning how to make media content for their campaigns. You have filmmakers understanding how to create campaigns, and that synergy is very exciting, very energetic, and it's very, it charges you up. But the government gets involved. And for example, I'll give you an example of a story of, say, one of the projects in local, which is it was about the transgender community, and they were painting these murals about 30 feet tall storings on the side of the wall. They would paint these paintings to bring awareness to transgenders. And they had, and to create an awareness about the community. And they had this project by which they wanted to take it across the state of Karnataka, this one particular state in India. And they were looking for walls. They were looking for walls, long walls that faced the road. And that was their pitch. They wanted these walls. And a whole lot of people came in to give those walls, so it's very tangible. It happens immediately. In 1 week, you can see the success of the local. You can see, the people who have pitched are so happy because they've got what they've pitched for, what they were struggling with. You get support for paint to paint those walls. It's easy. It's tangible. It's people come in on it because each state feels like it's their country. India is like a big country, but each state feels like this is their land. This is their land that they need to improve. So the coming in on it is very good. So you work like that on your projects. In national, the filmmakers are working on their projects. Ideally, if it comes in at the tail end or if it's at the post-production level, it's ideal. But if they are on the pre-production level or the production level, when it comes into Good Pitch and you've facilitated the partnerships and they've got their partnerships and their pledges, by the time the film gets completed, maybe the people who have been in those organizations have changed organizations. Maybe they don't even remember after 2-3 years, you have contact them. They don't even remember what they have exactly pledged at Good Pitch. So that is a bit of a struggle that we are facing, and we're trying to figure out how that should pan out. So this is primarily both the programs that we are doing. Now we are coming out with a program on Equalence, which is climate focused. It's a mixture of various formats. So it's a mixture of a format of Good Pitch is brought into Equalence, Impact Lab is brought into Equalence, and it's an interview-based format is there. So it's a mixture of Climate Story Lab, Impact Lab, and the Good Pitch format, all kind of formatted and creatively put into an event on the 9th and 10th of November. So these are the programs that we're doing.
That's amazing. I find it so inspiring to hear about how you, I want to say, puzzle together an impact campaign out of these tangible contributions. And I think it is also really empowering for the contributors, because very often when you know, a filmmaker is asking for support and they're asking for $100,000, it's out of reach of a lot of people who would love to support the film, who believe in the topic. But if you're asking for catering for a very specific event, or you're asking for transport to a specific region, it could be somebody that something that someone could contribute to. Okay, Judy, I want to shift to you now. Can you tell us a little bit more about your work in Kenya and East Africa?
Yes. Hi, my name is Judy Kibenge, and I'm the founder of an organization called DocuBox, which is based in Nairobi in Kenya. And we are a documentary film fund, and recently we've also begun to support short fiction. And DocuBox is kind of unique. I think like quite a few organizations here, it's actually started by filmmakers for filmmakers, and we literally exist to just hug and support and hold and walk with filmmakers, because we know how hard it is. You know, it's one of those things that always feels and sounds so glamorous until you become one and you realize just how hard it is, you know, to raise money for each project. And when you do have films out that you want the world to see, you realize, you know, that you have just a lot of work that you need to do to reach new audiences and so on. So DocuBox, our main work is to support independent filmmakers. We started up about 6 years ago now, and we hold workshops, we hold labs. I think like many places on our continent, this whole idea of you know, going to film school and so on it's a rare thing, you know, for us. It's a really rare thing. So, you know, as you know, we tend to learn on the job, and a lot of, you know, even the most highly celebrated filmmakers learned from other filmmakers. And so because of that, DocuBox really exists purely for professional filmmakers rather than complete novices or complete students. And this is from any age. You know, we support filmmakers. We've supported filmmakers as young as 17. So we're not, this is not about age. One of our most recent filmmakers was 21. But we will also support a talented filmmaker who's 60. It's all about, you know, just really being there for the industry and for our independent filmmakers. We, like Sophie, also hold the Good Pitch in Kenya, and we had our first Good Pitch a whole 4 years ago with in collaboration with the Doc Society, and we're really excited because you know, with this latest Good Pitch, government has come in to support us, something that we couldn't quite picture happening 6 years ago. 6 years ago, we were like, oh man, you know, how are we gonna get our government to also put money in? Because, you know, like Sophie, we're also supported by the Ford Foundation. And I think the beautiful thing about the Good Pitch, and the beautiful thing about when your films go out and begin to speak for you, when they begin to sort of impact the world, you're able to just pull in all these friends and partners that you didn't know existed, and they didn't know you existed, and films that may have stayed on a shelf, fantastic films, really begin to find that they have all these different friends and collaborators. And the Good Pitch, we are having ours next week on Thursday, literally a week from now, and it's just a really important event for us. So on top of DocuBox supporting films and having workshops and labs, we also do a whole bunch of screenings, and many of these screenings are impact screenings. And because, you know, we're really speaking about impact, I'll just try and give two very quick examples of how this works with us. Recently, we collaborated with Comic Relief, and 10 filmmakers were able to make 10 films around 4 different issue areas. These were short form documentary, none of them longer than, say, 18 minutes, a lot of them around about 12 minutes. And for instance, one of them, which was a young filmmaker called Eugene, who's just 21, did a documentary about mental health and his own journey with mental health. And he's a spoken word poet and so on. And he'd been going to schools a lot and speaking a lot with other young people. And so that film, that's the life that it took. He already had partners, but once we collaborated with him, the film was actually able to even partner with mental health organizations and just have a life far bigger than he would have been able to take the film around on his own. You know, another film that we were able to support was about women and maternal health. And just a week ago, we had just this wonderful, very emotional gathering with all these women who had lost their children coming together to watch this film about, you know, a woman who just had a journey exactly like theirs. And sometimes people can't speak about issues, and films allow them to do that. I know the time is so short, so I'll just add one more example, because I think there are a lot of fiction filmmakers in the room, and maybe some of you are going, well, you know, this doesn't, you know, Doc, it does apply to you. You know, everything speaks, everything communicates, and film is just so powerful, and fiction is, you know, can also be powerful. So recently we got into a project that was really trying to engage with young people who are being pulled into extremism, who are being radicalized. And there's so many ways and reasons that young people get radicalized. It's, you know, you don't have a job, your family's struggling, you need the income. It's not, you know, really just as the media portrays. So we made a whole bunch of fictional films based on factual experiences. And one of those films was just about a coach in a hood, in a neighborhood. And this coach, a lot of kids always going in, fewer of them appearing for their boxing lessons every day. This really amazing, promising kid, a recruiter hanging around trying to lure the kids in. And just a really beautiful little story, which you can actually Google and look up, called Coaches. Really beautiful little film. And that film was able, or has been able, even all this week and the last week, to get groups of young men talking about the struggles that they have and their struggles to resist radicalization. So it's impact is, you know, film in all forms, documentary especially, because it reflects reality and it tells stories that are just so real and so true and relate to people. Fiction sometimes, because of course it's difficult to get, for instance, into a radicalized group and film that and tell it in the same way. So different forms, we support different forms and make it impact with those films. So I think in a brief-ish nutshell, that's what we do. Some of the things that we do around impact.
Well, your nut is bursting out of the shell. You've got so many activities going. Yeah, it's I mean, getting young men to talk, groups of young men to talk, is notoriously difficult. And it's just so inspiring to hear how you're using film to do that. And what I hear from a lot of different people is that, you know, there's a lot of work that has been done over many years in the documentary impact space, thanks to Doc Society, Good Pitch, and other organizations. But there's a definite shift to acknowledging, as BD posted in the chat, that any form of storytelling can be used for impact work. And it can be fiction, it can be humor, you know, it can be comedy, even stand-up. So there's so many different things that are being used. But coming back to documentary, I think that sometimes people have this impression that documentary is educational, or that it's boring, or that it's only going to be an expose or an investigative piece. And there's so many different documentary films, short and long, out there, and they are entertaining, they're thrilling, they're moving. So it all comes back down to the storytelling. Sadal, I'd like to shift to you now. Apart from Sunshine Cinema, your distribution organization, you're also part of a network of people across Africa who do distribution. So please tell us about your work, and if you don't mind, give us a couple of snippets of what other people are doing as well.
Oh, hi everyone. Thank you for having me today. It's great to be here on this panel. I think it's best for me to start with just playing a short clip about Sunshine Cinema. Tabo, if you could pull that up for us. Otherwise, I can share it in the chat. I'm
just checking. Maybe it's not Tabo, Michael.
Don't worry. Let me just explain it, and then I can share the link as a YouTube.
Right.
So Sunshine Cinema is a solar-powered mobile cinema network. We operate in South Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Malawi. And we grew out of similar reasons that have been mentioned previously, based on the fact that we were making films and really struggling to get them seen by the communities that we were working with. We then went on to develop the technology for a sunbox, which is essentially a mini cinema in a box that's solar powered. And based on funding available in Southern Africa, we actually developed our model around trying to address youth unemployment, because that's one of the biggest issues, particularly in a place like South Africa, where you can access certain levels of funding. We haven't had that much support from government entities yet who deal with filmmaking and distribution. So we went that route. And essentially what we do is we train young people in quite rural communities around Southern Africa to be impact producers. So they host regular screenings in their villages and townships and the areas where they're based. They host them in shipping containers, shebeens, churches, town halls, chief, traditional leadership homes, depending on what films they're screening, using the cinema in a box. And we pay them a media internship salary to do that work with us. And at the same time, they're getting training in media facilitation, sparking conversation about different topical themes. We tend to focus on land rights, gender equality, conservation, corruption, things like that. And what we found is because they're hosting the screening so regularly, and they're hosting a mix of films, they're using fiction films, they're using documentary films, the audience becomes more familiar with the concept as it grows, and the attendance numbers really grow in the space, and they get a lot more engagement as the project continues. So there's definitely a local demand to see those films, which is very exciting for us. Yeah, and that's essentially how it started, and it's expanding as we go. It's quite challenging in terms of funding and COVID. During the COVID pandemic, all the areas where we work, public gatherings were put on hold. Slowly, we're starting to do COVID safety regulated screenings. But what we did do during that time was really focus on training the Sunbox ambassadors in impact production, media facilitation, as well as producing podcasts. So it's a media intervention initiative, broadly speaking. And then through that process of what we're doing, we were introduced through the Berlinale Film Festival to a wide range of incredible organizations based across Africa. And this is the first year of a think tank that's been developed by the Humboldt Forum, which is a museum in Berlin. So we're working with a cinema in Burkina Faso called Cine Gumbi. We're also working with a project and filmmaking initiative in Kinshasa called Cine Nabiso, the Sudanese Filmmaking Association in Khartoum, and the Nest Collective in Kenya. So we meet on a regular basis. We share ideas on audience research, films to screen, and how we can essentially transfer knowledge and exchange ideas in a Pan-African context, because South Africa tends to always, be quite separate from the rest of the continent. So I'm very happy that we get to be part of such a Pan-African initiative through this process. But let me just play you this short little clip about Sunshine Cinema, if that's okay.
Thank you for coming by. We're getting ready to start.
Most of us, we hardly go to cinemas.
There's no cinema around here.
I think it's important showing the African movies,
so that people out there can know who we are as Africans.
the past, we had very few African-made movies. So these African-made movies, they define us. They portray what we are, what we believe in as Africans.
I chose to become Sandbox ambassador because I see many people, young people especially in my community, getting involved in wrong things like drugs, crime. So with this Sandbox, we will be able to educate people.
I wanted to be part of real change in community. I think visual things have an impact in people's minds.
Within my society, there have been challenges where people have been actually failing to have conversations within a community openly. Some of the films, it teaches people about activism and them having rights to speak out.
I do what I do because carrying these films back to the communities, I know that I am bringing them hope.
Thank you. Just to end off, the Cinema Spaces Network, if anyone is interested in learning about it, because it is the first year of this think tank, and they really, thank you, Bidi, they really, they want to make it more inclusive. They want to include other parts of Africa. They realize that there's only 5 initiatives at the moment. We're having our first public presentation at an event in Berlin online on the 20th of November called the Afrikamera Festival. It's free, you just need to register. So I can send you the details for that to learn more about this evolving think tank. Thank you.
Fantastic, thanks. If those links aren't in the chat yet, Adele, maybe you can put that in. So you see the applause in the room, and I just want to share with you from the chat comments like, this is incredible, this is awesome, and wow, have just popped up. Yeah, Adele, it's so inspiring that you guys have really whittled down the technical elements that you need in order to be able to host a screening, and that everything fits into that one box. And I think we tend to think of a cinema as an air-conditioned large space with plush seats where you have to pay a lot of money to buy a ticket. And in South Africa, certainly those cineplexes are based in urban areas and suburban areas, and rural areas and informal settlements have very, very limited access. And the National Film and Video Foundation research that was done in 2014, 2015 in South Africa also showed that the majority of South Africans are not interested in those formal spaces where you have to sit on a plush chair and you're only allowed to consume the very expensive popcorn and drink that you buy from the cinema. They want to be in an informal space where they can talk to each other, where they can, bring their own food and, tweet while they're busy watching. So there's so many different kinds of spaces that we can use in Africa to distribute films. And for the guests in the room, part of the research that you need to do as you embark on your impact campaign is to find out where your audience is already. And I said this in my opening session, so sorry that I'm repeating myself, but you have to meet the audience where it is. It's a lot easier to take a film to where the audience already wants to consume the visual entertainment than to try and pull them into a completely strange space that's far away from where they are geographically situated. Okay, so I want to shift to the second topic that we want to cover in this session, and we're going to keep this very, very brief. And I would like to do a quick round robin and find out from each one of the panelists, who are you funded by, or who would you recommend as the organizations that people can apply to for funding? And before we do that, I just want to acknowledge what Bidi said before, and to say that it's not about applying to, the Forward Foundations and the Bertha Foundations. That's not your only recourse. There were so many incredible suggestions from everyone on the panel so far for how you can build a constellation of supporters that can make your impact campaign and your film production, quite frankly, possible. But let's do a quick round robin. Who are the funders that are out there internationally that are interested in Africa that our audience can apply to? Sophie, can I start with you?
I have absolutely no idea. I would say Dog Society.
Okay, moving on to Judy.
I mean, that's a tricky one. Yes, we are supported by Ford. But there are so many kinds of partners. I think we mentioned that our Kenya Film Commission came on board recently. We have partnered with the British Council. And then if you look at, I think all you guys, or a lot of you met Wanja the other day, a couple of days ago. I think she had a session. And if you look at just that whole body of funders and support from county government, from universities, from, it really depends what you're doing. We have workshops supported at times by different organizations, from Robert Bosch that will get support certain labs. I think raising money for films is always challenging. You have a whole basket of different funders you go to. Sometimes it'll be broadcasters, sometimes it'll be organizations like us or Sundance and so on. That's a big question. It's a hard one to sort of easily answer, I'm feeling.
No, that was absolutely fantastic. You threw many great suggestions into the basket. Sadal, do you have any suggestions?
So we have a mix because some of the equipment in the Sandbox is sponsored by brands. So Canon sponsor the cameras, JBL sponsor the speakers. So that brings some of the costs down on that end. And then, as I said, because we're addressing youth unemployment, we do access some youth employment empowerment funds, which is quite a big funding area in Southern Africa. We get some money from citizen journalism initiatives such as Internews, which I can share with you the details of. And then we do get some from impact funds, like through participant media. We did a big tour of The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind up to Malawi, so they funded that kind of thing. Sometimes we get it from the films, which is quite rare that the films actually have the funds for that. So it's a mix, but I must say in Southern Africa, we have struggled to get government support because the policies are written in such a way that only the filmmakers really qualify for impact funding or distribution funding. So if you're a third party impact partner or distributor, you don't necessarily qualify for those. So that's been a little frustrating. And then the Goethe Institute, the Bertha Foundation, just a mixed masala, like any funding, it's a hustle.
Yes, and I respect you so much because when we spoke recently, you told me that you'd just come out of a phase of applying to 40 different funds. And I just want to put that out there to everyone in the room that you're not going to be successful unless you're very lucky or very, very good on the first round of application. So you do actually have to apply to 40, 50 funders before you're going to get enough funding for your project. Bidi, I'm almost afraid to ask you, but do you have any suggestions?
I agree with everything all the panelists have said. Listen, don't imagine out there is a global funder with a massive fund, under film impact campaigns that's just going to write you a check. It doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. I concur with everything the panelists have said. Number one, think patchwork. And number two, it's issue. If your film is about the LGBTQ experience, do your research, find the queer funders. If your film is about freedom of speech, do your research, identify the funders who support, journalism, freedom of speech. You just what I mean? I mean, it genuinely be led by the issues and the thematics of your film. And that's where you're going to find alignment. If your film's about the climate, there is a pantheon of climate funders. I always reverse it back out. Rather than starting from a position of scarcity, it's a place of abundance. It's a place of abundance. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of different funders and partners who are aligned around any given issue area. And, yes, that doesn't make it easy for us, but please let's start from a kind of different perspective, which is, okay, in the documentary funding space, well, it's pretty limited. If you were going to draw a list of all the people who might fund a given feature documentary, I wouldn't get very far. Do you know what I mean? Like we'd go down and we do the national film funds, we do a bit of, you know what I mean? Like dang. Now I add all the potential issue-led funders. Oh, suddenly I have an enormous range. Think abundance, people. Think research, think strategy. do not be limited by that kind of like by our little fishing pot, which has been, you know, highly competitive and very kind of, yeah, highly competitive and not very well resourced film funding. You have a much bigger firmament to work in, but it does require thinking and research.
And a lot of hard work as well. And like you say, there isn't a quick fix, you know, it's not going to be, you know, this one pot that everybody dishes up out of. So I just want to summarize that, you know, some of the advice that have come from our panelists is that firstly, look at the people that you are already connected with, people that you know, and ask the people that you know whether they can connect you with anyone else. Sophie referred to philanthropists who might be able to get, or was it Sophie? Maybe it was Kushbu. No, sorry, it was Kushbu in the previous session, who referred to, you know, trying to get a donation from a private investor. You know, that could be very helpful, but also for those little bits of support that Sophie was talking about, you know, who are the people that you know, who can you ask for a projector, for a camera, for whatever it is that you need. Sadell mentioned brand sponsorship. You know, look at what the equipment is that you need or the resources that you need and see who the brands are that produce that and see if you can secure a sponsorship from them. And then, of course, the NGOs and the community-based organizations. And in the first session, we talked about themes, and we specifically talked about a film not having a single theme. Even if you have a primary theme that you are putting front and center, there might be other themes that you can capitalize on as well. So find those thematic links that BD referred to. And then think laterally, like Sadal using the youth development funding. So what other funding opportunities are there completely outside of the film space that you could potentially bring in to fund your film? And then, of course, crowdfunding. There were speakers in the previous session who talked about crowdfunding. And remember that a lot of people use the term crowdsourcing instead of crowdfunding, because remember, you're building your audience and you're building your supporters as you go along. Aggregate talks about those different levels of impact and in the impact funnel. And remember that there are certain people that you can use to further your message. So you could get people who actually want to share your message and want to become activists for your cause. So, you know, your crowdfunding campaign, your crowdsourcing campaign could be the start of that. Okay, so moving on to the next topic, I would like to find out from each of you, you know, we've had a very challenging 2020. It's been exciting, and I want to acknowledge that if it were not for COVID, we wouldn't have this incredible panel and all of these wonderful guests together in one room. It would be impossible for all of us to have flown to Abuja and be put up there by the wonderful organizers of AFFIF. But here we are, we together virtually, but working virtually also creates certain challenges. So let's talk a little bit about how you see the future of impact producing. What can we look forward to in the near future? What are the models that have been developed during this year that we can take forward? Which are the ones that we're going to leave behind? And what are the tactics that we can return to from next year when we're back to business as new normal? Bidi, I'm going to ask you to share about this first, because the idea for this topic actually came from you.
You'll forgive me if I'm slightly numb today. I've been awake watching the US elections for about 48 hours at this point, because the context in which we're doing this work is everything. I've been totally inspired and galvanized by the by the organizing which has happened as a direct consequence of COVID. Just to give you a little indication of what that means and looks like. So there is a global group of impact producers who meet virtually on a Google group. Their numbers have doubled during COVID to a network of nearly 500 souls dotted in from over 42 countries, I think, around the world. And the levels of conversation, of exchange, of ideas, resources, sharing of strategy. What I've experienced directly, and that's just in one group, what have I experienced directly, both in groups like that, both formally kind of amongst cultural partners in country and across countries, amongst groups of filmmakers, the levels of sort of solidarity and care are phenomenal. And I want to bottle that and hold it, and hold us to all of that new level of kind of connection and support. So I feel hugely encouraged by that. The adaptation that is being required of every single one of the creatives, both in the production but also the impact distribution of their projects, is phenomenal. And I know it has been a bit heartbreaking for some projects who had such a great plan, but was entirely predicated on physical activity, which is no longer possible. And I know that's been hard, but the adaptation has been extraordinary to behold. And for myself, the piece that I would welcome and keep, Liani, to answer your question, what I would hold, is the long overdue revolution in accessibility that the demand to go virtual has afforded. The fact that we're now including communities from those with disabilities to hard of hearing, to hard of vision, to those who could just never come and take part in our physical labs because they were single parents and couldn't get childcare or get time off work. There are so many pots of it, reasons for exclusion in our communities. Maybe it was around language. All of those have been vanished and evaporated by the possibility and the necessity of convening virtually. And I've really had, just really given me pause for thought. And I think it's going to lead to a change in practice and new standards and consideration that won't go back, and they shouldn't go back. And we are better and stronger for it.
Fantastic. Now I want to, very inspiring. I want to shift to Sadal. You mentioned earlier that you've started to do COVID safe screenings again. And I want to acknowledge that in the global south, where a lot of the audiences that we want to reach are rural or based in informal settlements, we need different strategies to reach them. So can you comment?
Sure. Firstly, I think BD should be president of the Impact. Great, inspiring work.
Of the world?
I think of the world. I think that in Nigeria and Kenya and places like that I've been to, data is so much more affordable and so much more accessible, and you can actually watch stuff on your phone without spending all your money. Whereas in South Africa, it's a very different situation, and Zimbabwe. So we have not been able to pivot into an online space as much as we would like, even though a lot of people have smartphones. They don't have the access to the internet in the same ways. So we are running much smaller screenings that are socially distant, that are preferably outdoors. We give everyone masks. We do temperature thermometer checks. There's a register. There's hand sanitizer. So we're following all those protocols for the time being. We're not sure how much longer we'll be able to do that, depending on cases and public gatherings. But so far, we're okay. And then in terms of other ways of pivoting, we have tried to adapt as much as possible. We're doing a lot of WhatsApp webinar trainings, which use a lot less data. So sharing the information on WhatsApp, not sharing too many videos, not sharing too many GIFs, that kind of thing. So just finding as many suitable solutions for the context of where we're working. But one thing I would really like to see after this pandemic, whenever that will be, is just really how important it is to bring people together in rooms. As much as it's great that we can have these online engagements and we are able to connect in a global sense, it is really powerful being in the same room with people, especially people that you don't agree with, because you can really have dialogues and you can have conversations in ways that online, I think, tend to get lost in silos and echo chambers. So I'm more for going back to being together when we can.
I agree. And I think that it's something really powerful that you highlight, that we shouldn't get stuck on trying to use one space or one platform. We can use in-person screenings, we can use low bandwidth solutions like WhatsApp, and then we can stream films or use Facebook Live or whatever the platforms are that we have available. I want to stay in Africa for a moment. Judy, what is the situation like in East Africa? What are the ways forward that will work for you or that you can recommend to us?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've always at DocuBox had a policy of sort of flexi time, as in, I just think we should trust each other. And I feel it's just a real privilege to be able to, be in an organization and set a rule that, we trust you, let's deliver on time, whether it's from your bedroom or the boardroom, we don't mind. But we like being together at DocuBox. We feel like a kind of family. And so, we're in a couple of times, but right in the beginning, we found we were online all the time. And guess what? It was okay. It was better than okay sometimes. I felt especially always really sorry for, I don't know what the traffic is like in Abuja. I know what it's like in Lagos, but in Nairobi, it's become horrible. And if you live in Eastlands and you're coming for a lab, we had people waking up at 5 in the morning to get to us by 8:30 or 9. It's really hard. And it was just so fresh to see everyone in on time for all the labs, fresh-faced, able to go and get coffee. And we were able to convert that money that we would spend doing these lunches and send people data and a little something to grab a bite or do some groceries to sustain themselves through the workshop. And I loved that. Also, something I found really interesting is really early on with these radicalization films, one of the ones we did was an animation. And I found it amazing that I found that I could find the animators online, look at their work online, chat together, sit and edit together online. I feel like I know them. But like Sidel, of course, we miss each other, and being in spaces together is really good. But I'm not going to let go of a lot of these learnings that we've made, and to be able to see my son, not to have to leave in the morning when the sun has just come in the night just before he goes to sleep. That's unnatural. I also realized that there's something very unnatural about the way humanity was regarding, workspaces wherever you want it to be, if you're lucky enough not to be physically doing things. And as for shoots and things, we're slowly a lot of crews, it's difficult, learning how to shoot, constantly sanitizing hands and doing temperature checks. The Good Pitch itself, we're actually going to experiment with some remote cameras actually, because we're going to be in a theater and we're actually going to have some of the film crew out and we're going to experiment and learn. So it's been a great time of learning. I personally have loved learning. I've enjoyed doing a lot of these masterclasses and things, and I've had time to grow. And I feel many of my colleagues and friends and filmmaking community have also had the same. Yeah, so that's been our experience.
That's fantastic. And I share your experience of all of the amazing online learning. Mickey, can I please ask that you put the link to the CSMI and Together Films Digital Power 2020 series up. So I see a few messages on the chat coming in from people asking for links to training. And guys, this is incredible. It's a series we're about halfway through. It's every Monday evening. Well, depending on where you are in the world, but for South Africa and UK, it's in the evening. So I've just found it incredible. I wear out my fingers typing notes while I'm in those sessions. So that's a great place to start. Sophie, share with us some tips, advice, learning from India.
On the COVID period, I find that the documentary filmmakers in India and even cultural organizations like us, we have actually, I mean, it's inspiring because they've really become creative in the way they've looked at impact. They've changed things around. They're viewing the digital space in a different light. For example, I'll give you in Good Pitch, we had this film called Coral Woman, which came at the ideal point. They just finished the film, so they were ready for impact. and we had a pledger who pledged to making a book on the film, a children's book on the film. And then we went into lockdown. And that book is now actually materializing in a digital format. So that work continued because, everybody was sitting at home, so pledgers could keep their pledges. So filmmakers were working on it. I've also found that in the way of raising funding, filmmakers raising funding is also, they're looking at it creatively. For example, if I give you, because these are projects like we're working on right now, is this film on jackfruit. The filmmaker was trying to find funding. But now he has rechanged the way he's looking at funding. So he's now cycling to various villages. And this is an impact. He's raising funding for his film and his impact story together. So he's cycling by himself to various villages with his team and shooting the stories there. And per village, he's got a certain amount that he's going to raise funds for, where he wants to create a recipe book and he's going to be having footage to make his film. So there's a combined amount that he's getting from there. So he's combined impact and filmmaking together to raise money, So there's creative ways they're doing it. People are giving their cameras into regions that they're shooting where the protagonist is actually shooting certain footage for them. They're not going there to do it. So there's a lot more collaborative work that filmmakers are doing, which I find really, really inspiring. When you're like cultural organizations such as ours, when we're doing Equalence, we're walking into a space, which is an entire editing room, and each person is sitting in one editing suite in order to do the whole event. So you're maintaining that isolation at the same time. At the same time, you still have the proximity, You're there, you can kind of open your door and yell out to the other person and you feel that physical contact, even though you don't have that physical contact. So there are interest in innovative and creative ways that you're moving around it. The budget, even where you are, where regarding your colleagues, you'd land up paying, salaries a lesser amount, because you find that when people are sitting at home, they're able to utilize their day in various ways. So they can work on 2-3 projects together and earn money more, rather than if they were just tied in with your organization and doing that one job. And they were getting a particular amount for it. So as long as the deliverables are met and you set those deadlines and the deadlines are met, what they're doing, otherwise, you're coming into office, work is finished by like around 2 o'clock, people are Facebooking, Instagramming. Now they're utilizing their way in working on for various other organizations, other stuff. The whole day is kind of filled, in that way. So that's what I found here in India, my experience.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Thank you. Something else that you mentioned in a previous conversation that we had is headhunting impact producers. Do you remember about looking for people that are at a certain point in their career, at a certain age, where they need something new and exciting to do? Tell us a little bit about that.
That's just my recipe for trying to nab the impact producer, really. Because when we started in 2014, we didn't have any, impact producer as a word, as a profession really didn't exist. But I found that through time, that people who are actually interested in impact producing were executive producers of organizations, like reality show executive producers, or one of these, like Star Plus executive producers, or one of these channel executive producers, who have reached a certain point in their lives where they've made all the money that they want to make, but they just don't feel that they feel a certain loss, a certain dissatisfaction in their lives. And they want to be able to move or do or give back in some manner. And so therefore, when I tend to meet people like that, I can sense it. And then I invite them into the impact workshop, and then I see what journey that takes them. That's how we do it.
That's absolutely brilliant. I think that we can definitely take inspiration from that as well. Okay, so we are about 5 minutes away from the end of the session. So I wanted to bounce the ball to Mickey and ask whether there are any questions either from the Zoom chat or from YouTube that you want to bounce our way, or anything burning that you think that we've left out that you still want answered before we wrap up.
Hi, yes. I actually wanted to make a comment, and I was just looking for the link, which I'm going to paste in here, but just relating to what Didi said earlier about the way COVID has equalized things to a certain extent and allowed more people into the room. I think that relates so strongly to the previous impact session we ran at Durban Film Mark, where we had Naomi Walker and Vanessa Cuervo, and they spoke to that quite fantastically as well. And actually, I'm going to share that in the chat and ask you guys to copy that link, because Vanessa also shared some really interesting impact strategies that they used during COVID, where they actually broadcast a film via Facebook in prisons, because that was where their target audience was. And so just really interesting ways of reaching out to an audience when you don't have the simple old route of going to the cinema and sitting at the festival. So look out for that link. I haven't picked up any questions specifically in the chat, but I actually noted a question just earlier on, just going back to strategizing and impact, and Beedie's opening section where she spoke about the field guide and mentioned, reaching politicians and policymakers, and it's something that came up in the previous session. So I just want to pause there for a moment around strategizing towards reaching the top targets, which is often very difficult. And I think that's where sometimes filmmakers miss the target. And I've certainly done that, where you head straight for the policymaker or the politician, and you kind of go for your high-end market. But actually, you need to be working on building a groundswell to gradually shift things so that you reach them in that way. And in the field guide, Doc Society elaborates quite clearly on the bottom-up versus the top-down approach. And I was wondering if Beedie just didn't want to circle back and just speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I hope that the field guide leaves you realizing that either strategy is possible and useful. There isn't a golden rule. Do you know what I mean? I certainly don't, and I don't think the field guide espouses that, well, only grassroots, work is the right way to do it, or unless you're doing a kind of top-down strategy which results in policy change, your project is a failure. We absolutely don't espouse that. The question is, can I put it a different way, is once you know what that beautiful story is, once it's manifesting, and there's often a point in around, some point in the edit where you go, okay, I know what this thing is. I know what the soul of this story is. I know who the kind of hero of it is. And I can begin to get a sense of who it is it's resonating with. And it's that deep understanding of the particular power of your film and who it is that it speaks to, which then determines, well, what are my opportunities here from a change perspective? Is this story actually just, and I can definitely think of, excellent examples where, frankly, the film, is never going to have, huge ratings. There's a classic example of this in Invisible War, which is a film from, it's quite some time ago now, maybe 8 years ago, made by Kirby Dick, and it was about sexual assault in the US military. This film was never going to be like a big hit, right? Sure, it was bought, but my God, the audience wasn't big. It was never going to do any box office. But literally, it was perfect as a tool to be deployed within the Pentagon, within the White House, within some of the policymakers and lawmakers. It definitely worked as a tool for commanders of bases to use as a training device. So it had a very specific function, right? And you knew that once you saw the film. The problem, and actually the lucky thing is, in that case, the filmmakers understood that and embraced it. Do you know what I mean? They were like, if this is what the potential of this film has to unlock, then damn, we're going to mine that furrow. But neither did they distract themselves with a kind of a vision which was, but that, we also want massive public applaud and massive reach because it's going to be a cultural shift tool, a kind of more broader, because it wasn't. But they did have the self-awareness. So I would say, just rewinding back in, begin with the film and who it is that the film can speak to. Do your contextual analysis of what are the, if you do think you have an instinct, your film could be used as a way to engage lawmakers or politicians. If it does, then again, having that contextual analysis, collaborating with political strategists who can really help you unpick what's the opportunity here. What does that look like? Is it about, a one-on-one screening with a particular, head of state? Literally, me, this politician, a television, a cup of coffee. That's it. That's going to do it. Or is it about a kind of setting up a kind of more general parliamentary screening to aid and abet a particular select committee who's debating a question? Or, do you see what I mean? You can go on and on and on, but thinking about the precise device and mechanism that can unlock results. Often we need advice on that. I mean, it's so delicate. And I think as filmmakers, we can go, but I want it to have political effect. And it's like, yes, but you really need to do your analysis about how, if it's the right tool for the job, and then how to do it. And then let's get help. And there are plenty of strategists out there who understand how to work the pathways of power.
And sorry, yes.
No, thanks, Bidi. There was a question for Judy as well, just a very practical question about the Good Pitch that's coming up a week from now. Is, can anyone attend? Can people in this room attend? Can people observe? And how to do that?
Yes, we'll actually ask you to, I think there's a link that you posted, Nikki. And if you click on that link, you can read up about all the different films. You may be interested in one of those. You will definitely be interested in at least one of those 5 films. And we have the contact for our outreach director, and that is who to reach out to join the Good Pitch. It's going to be amazing.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. Sadal, do you have any closing remark? Do you want to point people at anything that's happening soon that they should check out?
Just thank you for having me. Mickey has shared the link to the AFRICamera event. That'll be on the 20th of November, 5 p.m. Berlin time. And that's when all the different entities from the Cinema Spaces Network will be presenting. Thank you so much.
Brilliant, thanks. Sophie?
Well, I just like to, I mean, it's just a fun thing that we do in India about how we get to people of power, is that when we try to reach people of power, we normally tend to go through either their accountant or their lawyer. These are our two standard procedures of finding out who the accountant is or their lawyer is, and then actually pitching their project to them and getting their buy-in. And that's how we get to the people of power. Where the
wow.
Where the politicians are concerned, sending email really doesn't work. So you have to send it on. In India, you have to have it on record because you can always pull it up later. So you fax the email. I mean, you send a fax to the government still, okay? And you make friends with their secretary. You know their name, you know their children, you know their family. So when the file goes into the room, your paper lands up being first. So the secretary of the politician is really the most powerful one for us.
I love that. It just gives me the perfect segue to close the session by saying that what is so clear from what you all have contributed to this discussion is that there isn't one single way of doing it. There isn't one single funding model. It's unique for every film, and that there really is a constellation of potential partners and support that are out there, and each filmmaker or impact producer needs to research what that constellation is, reach out and get those people involved. And the kind of energy and enthusiasm that we saw today from the panel, I hope that that's been very inspirational to all of the filmmakers and the impact producers in the room, and to model to you the kind of energy and creative thinking and lateral thinking that you have to employ to make impact campaigns a reality. So thank you so much to Sophie, Sadal, Judy, Bidi. We all appreciate your time tremendously, and it's been such a rich session. So much that we've gained from hearing from all of these different spaces, from Africa, from India, from Europe, to find out how people are doing things and how they view impact. And there's so many things that we can take with us. And I want to challenge every one of our guests to develop your own models and become so successful at them that we invite you to sit on a panel at AFFIF 2021. We hope to see you there again. And since this is the last session, I just want to take a moment to thank the wonderful University of Cape Town documentary impact team. Mickey Riedlinghuis, who's been my partner in crime throughout this year in offering sessions at 3 different festivals, Tabo Bopape, our learning coordinator and our technical liaison on these, Takira Bihadin, our producer, who's been doing a lot of communication and organizing, and then Arati Moyambo, who is our marketing officer and has been posting on social media like a whirlwind. So thank you so much to everyone. And thank you, guests. Thanks for coming to the session. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope to see you again next year. Bye, everyone.
I want to say a very big thank you to everyone who's been a part of this section. A very big thank you to Dr. Liani, who engaged me to begin this conversation, about having UCT here with us in this particular edition of the festival. And all through the period, all through the process, UCT has been with us even when we had to postpone during the COVID-19 pandemic. It should have been a physical festival, but finally we ended up doing a virtual, which for us is great because we couldn't have had these great, amazing people join us here, for the festival. So thank you, Dr. Liani, and thank you to University of Cape Town for accepting to partner with us, and to all our sponsors, all our partners, and to everyone who has joined this section. We want to say very, very big thank you. Like Dr. Liani said, we're very hopeful that the 2021 edition of the festival is going to be a physical festival, but we also appreciate the virtual one because it has leveraged us more opportunity to meet great people across the world. So thank you for joining us in this section. We'll be bringing this particular section to a close right now, but you can still, for those of us who joined late, you can still watch the YouTube video. There's a lot to learn from it. I mean, a lot of us here missed yesterday's section. Yesterday's section was amazing, like very, very great. You can also get to YouTube and watch yesterday's section and also see some other videos. We have a couple of films that will be showing. Some are already on the platform screening, others will be joining by 8 p.m., but there's a film premiering by 4 p.m. The film is titled, Where is Nana? You want to see the film. Then another film will be premiering by 7 p.m. too, and it's titled The Manifesto. These are films made by social impact filmmakers, some of which are on this platform currently. And we have a couple other films, great films from across African diaspora that are screening today. So we want you to join us to watch those films. At 1 p.m., we'll be back with a masterclass in directing, cinematography, screenwriting, and women in film program. And also there's an acting masterclass. So you will also want to join that masterclass so you learn, for those of us who are interested in one of these aspects of filmmaking. So join the masterclass. Then at evening, we'll be having another panel section. Of the theme is Building Accountable Leaders and System for a Corrupt-Free Society. Every one of us across the continent, we know it's a major challenge in the continent and even across the world. And we have a couple of films that will be screening from 8 p.m. That will be addressing this subject, some of which also will be addressed in 2 of the films that will be premiering today. And then also we have other activities we want you to join, like the panel section and also the film premiere and film screening. So please try and join us. The other masterclasses begin by 1 p.m. Same platform. Check us up on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at AFFIF.ng on Instagram. You can follow updates to see how the festival progresses. Then on Twitter is AFFIF Nigeria. You follow us so you can get updates on what's going on with the festival. And also, please, we'll be sending some kind of survey to those of us who attend the festival, just to share your thoughts, just you to help us make the experience of the festival, this particular edition, better, having still 2.5 days to go, because at the end of today, we'll be having just 2 days to go. The grand finale is in 2 days' time. So we would like you to please kindly fill the survey to help us know how we're doing and know what we can do better. Okay, and then all links for the sections will be added on the YouTube of this video. In the description of the YouTube of this video, all links to the next section, the next sections will be added there. So you can go to the YouTube channel is AFFIF TV. You know, so you can go there, you see links to every other activity of this festival. And once again, a very big thank you to the University of Cape Town, South Africa for partnering with us on this. We would remain ever grateful and we look forward to a greater partnership in 2021 and a better festival in 2021. This is the maiden edition of Africa Film for Impact Festival, and we appreciate every one of you who have joined us to make today's section, this particular morning section, a great one.